Okay, so this is Naikari, I believe it was. Yes, Naikari. This is just gonna be a short thing about my thoughts on this fork of Naev. I should probably also open up Naev, huh? Give me a second. Maybe also mute the game. Or just mute the audio capture here. Boop. That should do it. No, that's gonna play. That's gonna have. Yeah, they're both playing in the background now. Great. Also, I'm kind of tired, so. Okay. So this is a kind of a halfway by request kind of thing to give my impressions on Naikari. So that's what I'm going to talk about. As I've said before, it is a fork of Naev at around the version 0.8 mark. So it has some of the design aspects of version 0.8. This is version 0.3.0, and the latest, as of this recording, the latest upcoming update is 0.4.0, which means that some of what I'm going to say is probably not accurate, or at least is either irrelevant or has already been fixed, right? So, fixed is very indulgent of me. Have been changed. Okay. Alright. Okay, so, really should have moved my ships in Naev over to Goddard as well, so that I could do a proper side-by-side comparison, but whatever. So, right, like, immediately right off the bat, obviously 0.8 and this system of increasing amounts of blue, let's not, right? But aside. These map markers are not useful in the slightest because they have no context as to what's around them. Right? Like, you know what they are after you've played the game once, but if you're coming into it fresh, they don't do anything. Like, right, like, yes, finding this map unlocks this part of the space, which is useful, but like, if you don't know what to do with that information, providing this relevancy doesn't help you in the slightest. It's cool though, but hey. Second. Yeah, I'll just get to the meat of why I wanted to record this in the first place. So, question to Mr. Diligent Circle. So obviously, again, fork of Naev, right? And it does Navy things. The differences were not nearly as impressive as I thought it was. So, alright, I'll close Naev now. So question. What is the core gameplay loop of Naikari? By which I mean, let's take the direct competitors, right? So Endless Sky is old, or not Endless Sky. Escape Velocity is old as shit. Let's put that aside, and let's draw direct comparisons to this Endless Sky and Star Sector, right? Because they're games that more or less exist in the same kind of space. In Endless Sky, right? All three of these games do kind of the same thing, right? Which is that you have a certain amount of money. When you take off from a planet, and then you land on a planet, possibly the same planet, the amount of money that you have goes up. And occasionally, you spend that money for upgrades, and those upgrades in turn makes it easier for you to get money, right? So that you can spend that money on more upgrades. In Endless Sky, this loop functionally has no ending, right? Or an ending that is arbitrary, decided by the player, because you can just continue to add ships to your fleet. And there comes a point, right? There comes a point where, if you have 8 cargo ships, you could have enough money per each loop to just add a new ship to your fleet, right? And beyond that, you can add a new ship to your fleet and equip it the way you want every loop. Right, and then having more ships also makes it easier for you to get money, makes the storyline easier, blah 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 blah. In Star Sector, it's pretty similar, right? Every loop you get money, you use the money to buy ships or buy upgrades for your ships, bigger fleet, easier fights, more ability to explore more of the world, so on and so forth. So in comparison, Naikari and Naev, they both, okay. It plays similarly to Endless Sky, but in terms of the feel of each of its core gameplay loop, it feels closer to Star Sector. By which I mean, in Endless Sky, you jump from system to system. Once you enter a system, that sector of that gameplay loop is essentially determined, right? Because, like, if you jump into the system and there's a fight, you're gonna have a fight. Or you're gonna run away from the fight, but you're gonna have a fight, right? If you jump into a system in Star Sector, it is not... you have more freedom as to what you want to do. So, like... how do I say this? Right, if you jump into a system in Star Sector, right? For example, it's a... Alright, back up. In Star Sector, there are 2 aspects of exploration. You have a system map, and you have kind of like the hyperspace, right? So the hyperspace is how you get around from system to system by paying fuel. Once you jump into the system, the map is determined at game gen. But the moving aspects of it, such as what fleets are in that system and where they are, is determined on when you enter, right? What this means is that, similar to Naikari, where the two have similarities, it is entirely possible to enter and immediately be forced to go into a fight, or alternatively be able to maneuver around. Cool. So, in that sense, in Star Sector, if you are outmatched, you get to... there are resources you can expend to avoid getting the shit beaten out of you, right? That does not exactly exist in... Yeah, that does not really exist in Endless Sky. It does not really exist in Naev, right? You can run, obviously. And in Endless Sky, like, running is easier because you're just going, oh no, I'm outgunned, let's jump away from this system, and hope that once the map updates, something good will happen to me. I usually don't remember something good happening to me, but hey, that's neither here nor there. So... to that end, right? Because Star Sector, this is just my personal take on it, because Star Sector is fairly combat focused, there are resources that focuses upon engagement and moving away from engagement, right? Because Endless Sky is arguably fleet focused, there are resources for essentially increasing the effectiveness of your fleet, increasing the size of your fleet, right? And the fights can get really massive really quickly. So in a sense, backing up for just a second, in Star Sector, the size of your fleet is hard-coded. Hard-coded in the sense that you have a defined for it that's outside of the game. Right? By default, it's like 30 ships or something. Endless Sky, no such problem. So like Star Sector, it's combat focused that focuses around the composition of your fleet. Right? If your ships have good synergy, you get better output in a fight than if you just have raw numbers. To compare, in Endless Sky, you could just have like 200 ships, right? And just like Zerg rush and win that way. And that's perfectly okay, right? That's what the game is designed to do. So what is Naikari designed to do? Because it shares by virtue of it being a fork, it therefore shares the same design flaws, right? In that you have a massive open space and there's not much to do. Right there, and like I've been reading the patch notes, and the patch notes do imply that there's a lot of storylines, which is fine. But because there's no way for you to escape from engagement, and because the points of engagement are focused around the hyperlinks, the hyperlanes. Because of those two things, the desire for exploration is therefore smaller. Because if you're in over your head, there is no way to disengage. Right, and to that end, Naev 0.9, I believe that's when it first was implemented. I do not know if this is implemented in Naikari 0.4, but the existence of like safe lanes between the jump points and the planets, it doesn't really like fix the problem, right? Hyperlanes and stealth systems, they don't exactly fix the problem of, you know, focused points of engagement, but it's a move to try and mitigate the issue. So that's always good. But ultimately, the question still remains, right? If the internal core of the game is that you are rewarded for being inquisitive, how does that mesh with the inherent combat design of the game, which is that being inquisitive leads to your immediate death. Right? It leads to your death unless you are able to, actively fight your enemies. And like this is, as far as I can tell, 0.8 AI, which is that, they're gonna go after you, right? And you need the money to get the upgrades. You can get the money by going from system to system, right? Because going from system to system are the missions that give you the most money. By taking risks, like you get bigger benefits for taking risks, but at the same time, the punishment for taking those risks is enormous. By the sheer virtue of, again, the combat being focused around these key points. So, how do you square those two? Right? Like, the safest way to get money is to stick around safe space. But the rest of the game is outside of that safe space. Let's go to Goddard for a second. Also, yes, I have no issues with cheating the game so much that it gives me, like, PETAs, PETA credits. Like, you have kilo credits, now have fun with PETA credits. Like, this is not billions anymore. I don't remember how many zeros I added while I was trying to fiddle with that, but it was a plenty of zeros, right? But by default, you start with a llama with a price of like, what, 120,000? Something obscure, something incredibly obscure like that. You have 30 grand to begin with, right? You have 30 grand to begin with. The average price of food, let's compare this right now, is 70. The price in total is, like, the upper cap price on this is 80 plus 15, let's say, which is 80 plus 15, 95, right? A 25 price difference in the best of cases. The beginning llama has like 30 tons of free space. So 30 times 25 is 600, 700, 750. 750 credits of income. 0.1, or sorry, just let's round up and just say it's 1,000 credits of income. A koala is 435 kilos. 435k. Right? I mean, let's even pretend you start with a koala. 435. The cost of a Quicksilver is 575. There is a, what? 140 kilo difference. Right? And you have a ship trade-in of, I believe if you trade in ship, hang on, let's just do this. Let's just do it real quick. Where's my ship? Did I not buy it? Yeah, okay. This is also reversed. You don't want your yes to be on one side and your cancel to be on the other. Okay. So koala. Trade it. Okay. So the new so it is a sheer value, right? So 140k. So this means that, like, if you're starting with a koala and you're trading with a it has 75 tons of cargo, more if you're playing around with it. But it means that functionally you need 140 trips between two planets, assuming that you make maximum value on each trade to upgrade one tier. Not even one tier, just to upgrade into a different ship. which is kind of insane if you think about it, right? Because like that's a lot of time spent doing what is essentially grinding with no other input. And this is a issue that Naev also has, and I think both games try to rectify that. Well, I mean, they're the same fork, right? So both games do try to rectify that by giving you plenty of subquests, but you have to travel for the subquests, which means you have to be inquisitive, which means you have to take risks, which means you have to die, like, a lot. And that's not ideal, right? Like, let's put it this way. In the Souls series of games, you are expected to die a lot and to learn how to get past the obstacles. But the obstacles are always constant. Here, they're kind of randomly generated. Like, you know, if you die to 3 ships, you just kind of have to hope that the next time you go there, there's just not going to be 3 ships, which is suboptimal. So, to wrap all that up, again, the question is, what is your core gameplay loop, right? If you're imagining a player having fun, what are they doing? Because when I played this a long-ass time ago, it was fun to get to the highest tier of ship, to get to the Hawking. And then I stopped immediately after that, because I had already achieved what I needed to do, and there was no more reason to be inquisitive, right? Because in some ways, the grind to get there sapped all my desire to actually see what the rest of the world had. And that sucks, because there's a shit ton of love that goes into this game. Right? After reading the patch notes, I realized that there is a storyline that deals with the liberation frontiers, like the guys that tries to kill you all the time. But the fact that I had to find that out through patch notes does not do this game justice. Like, I do not believe that that is your desired endpoint for this game, right? For people to learn about how deep, how rich the storyline can be with, you know, with supplementary material. Because that's unfair, right? So, yeah. TLDR, if it is indeed the case that, you know, if it is indeed the case that the ship I have is essentially my home in space, the amount of outfits that I should have access to and the amount of customization options that I should have access to should reflect that. Right? It should reflect that. If it is indeed the case that this ship is to be min-maxed to hell and back to be the most combat effective that it can be, the outfits should reflect that. I should be allowed to have outfits that have deficiencies on one point in order to have severe benefits in other. Right? Like, it should not just be this is good at one thing, this is good at the other thing, this is good at the third thing. Right? It should be, in that case, it would be, we have a weapon that's good at one thing, a weapon that's really good at one thing and just awful at the others, right? And so on and so forth. So, like, what is the aspect of design here? What is the end purpose? In Endless Sky, in Star Sector, when you have too much of everything, you are done. It takes a significant amount of time to get there simply because you can dodge your issues. Yeah, Naikari, you can't really dodge your issues. So you kind of, like, when you're done when you're frustrated with the game. And then, yeah, that's very much so, like, not a fair thing to say, right? But Yeah, that's a very long, rambly thingy. I'll put the TLDR in the video description. But yeah, like this game is obviously trying to tell a story. Right? It's trying to tell a story that you are allowed to enjoy at your own leisure. But it gates that story behind the necessity of being strong enough to avoid getting jumped. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.